My name is Cherise from the Endangered Wildlife Trust. And I've come to give you a bit of a real basic pilot overview of a preliminary study that we're looking into in terms of our alien clearing along the coastal side. So you'll see it might generate quite a lot of discussion because there's some revised methodologies that we would like to look at getting grant funding after this, but still for some interesting discussion. So we focused our study on Chromalina, which is one of the biggest invaded plants where we're working on clearing coastal sites through our threatened amphibian program, who eThekwini just sort of lumped in with our wetland program. We found that Chromalina was very dense. It was one of the biggest invasive plants along our coastal sites in eThekwini area. And yes, we know that it's successful because it's fast to grow, it's got mass seed dispersals, got some natural predators, it's also consequences. There's quite a big soil erosion problem. And we found that clearing alien invasive plants along the coast in the walkways created such destabilization of dunes that we're wondering whether the way we clear alien plants conventionally is it a healthy option for the coast. And these open sites where it has been, the dunes have been destabilized, the alien invasive plants can just come back again and then reseed. And so what we thought of, when you look at the downside of dune alien clearing, because of the gradients of where they go up and down and the densities, it's causing quite a lot of trail erosion. And because the soils and the soil structures are quite loose, that's promoting that erosion within our sites. So what we did is we basically just did a preliminary study, just looking at different indigenous alternatives, Bolleria and the Chrysanthemoides, which are already found along the coast. What we did is with different stands, in the quadrant 1, we tried just Bolleria with Chromalina. We then tried Chrysanthemoides alone with Chromalina, and then we looked at a mix. So we mixed Bolleria and Chrysanthemoides together, and then obviously the no control. But what we did is it wasn't just planting, it was actually managing the growth. So we would cut back to allow the indigenous plants to take over and support and promote their growth, and then also remove flower heads, so control seed dispersal as well. Okay, so what we found is before now, granted the study is still in its really beginning stages, it is just a preliminary one. What we found is before that in the quadrant 1, control, the growth basically remained the same. Although it started to get after the rain, other weeds would come up in some of the bare areas. So we had a 10% growth in other plants in the rainy season. And then in our quadrant 1 with Bolleria, you can see that there's, with control of the canopy cover, measuring the canopy cover and the control of the growth, you can see that Chromalina comes down, and giving Bolleria and also other plants to come up. The other plants are mostly weeds, which are taking control over there. But we'll see that Bolleria repens is actually starting to take over the canopy cover with that growth. You can see our pretest is basically from May up until now, but we're hoping this is an indication that we can take these preliminary studies further. Then in quadrant 2 we had our Chrysanthemoides. You can see this is also during the rainy season. We don't have rain data overlapping this, but you can see our Chrysanthemoides are starting to take over. They actually did very well with plant growth. In fact, they've actually recently started to take over the canopy cover with that. In quadrant 3, these are actually swapped around. Let me go back. This is actually the 4. See, now when I fix this. But you can see the Chrysanthemoides in this one didn't do well. Our mixed one didn't do well. We're not really sure why. But our Bolleria did very well. You can see it's sort of taken over on the ground cover side. We only had one chrysanthemoides survive out of the 6 of this 2 meter by 2 meter quadrant. But Valeria, yes, is really, if you control that growth, is starting to take over. We had thought that the mix would do well because the Valeria would cover the ground and the chrysanthemoides would start to take over on the height side. But for some reason, and we're not sure why, it didn't go that way. You can see the erosion control. This is from one of our normal clearing sites, and this you can see our 2 quadrants are quite close together, but the control is on the one side and the quadrant is on the other side, and where we're going in and out, the erosion is quite well maintained. Okay. So yeah, in conclusion, we've, if we look at the the Chromalina, if you with controlled growth, obviously the reduced canopy cover is being, the percentage that is taking over is being reduced. And if you look at chrysanthemoides and the Valeria, we notice that they are really good plant competitors if you manage the growth of the chrysanthemoides to allow them time to get that growth. What we'd like to do is get dedicated teams and compare conventional clearing along the coast with our teams that we've already got in field, but then get another team that can go in and plant Valeria and chrysanthemoides in plug form, and then they go sweep through the system, manage the plant growth and the seed dispersal, and then see from there, compare the 2 sites to see maybe this would be a more constructive or less invasive way of dealing with coastal plant clearing. I think we all know, I don't know who's worked along the coast, but coastal plants and invasive species and accessibility to clear alien plants and the impacts of clearing on coastal ecology systems is quite high. So we're quite excited about this to see how we can develop a more constructive method. Yes, and basically, we just like to thank our sponsors that we got for this preliminary study that we've done. Our program is funded through the Department of Environmental Affairs, and we've also got Rand Menschenberg, eThekwini, and Disney Foundation that help us with our funding for these things. But yeah, we are going to apply for some grant funding to do more in-depth studies on this methodology. Good. I think I was quick. But yes. That is all from my side. If you have any questions.